Hello and welcome to Big Picture. I am Vishal Dahiya and today we will talk about the issue of junk food and children. Now, the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, that is FSSAI, has recently released draft regulations for ensuring healthy food for children, titled as Food Safety and Standards Safe Food and Healthy Diets for School Children Regulation 2019. One of the important regulations proposed in this draft is that foods which are high fat, salt or sugar cannot be sold to children in school canteens, mess premises, hostel kitchens or within 50 meters of the school campus. And junk food is considered as one of the leading causes of health problems. So how will these guidelines help in tackling the problem? For more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests in the studio. Let me first introduce the guests to you, beginning with Mr. S.K. Saxena. He's the principal of Kendriya Vidyalaya in R.K. Puram in Delhi. We also have with us Ms. Neeti Srivastava, member of Parent Association in Gautam Budh Nagar, that is in Delhi, NCR. And we also have with us Aditi Tandon, special correspondent from the Tribune, somebody who keeps a tab on issues like these. And we're also joined by Ms. Inoshi Sharma. She's the director of FSSAI. Let me begin with you, Ms. Sharma, because the guidelines have been framed by your organization. So let's begin with what exactly are the draft guidelines? What's the focus area out here?
The focus area of the draft regulations are primarily that schools, we are hoping that schools would become eat-right schools. What an eat-right school really means is that the school will ensure that students are encouraged to have balanced, healthy and nutritious food, and they are also encouraged not to waste food. Secondly, they will ensure that the canteens, mess or the vendors who are operating tuck shops or kiosks in their school premises are registered under the FSS Act, which means under the Schedule 4 they are following hygienic and safe practices to prepare food or to store food, how to handle food. Also, the food business operators or people who are providing food cannot sell food which is high in salt, fat and sugar within the school premises or within 50 meters of the school.
Okay. Once these guidelines are implemented, they're draft guidelines and there have been suggestions which have been asked on these guidelines as well. How do you intend to implement these guidelines within the schools? And do you agree with the fact that this particular set of rules will ensure that this kind of issue will be tackled with?
Definitely, whenever any guidelines are issued, being government school, it is our responsibility to ensure that we should follow each and every guideline. But as far as this particular junk food problem is concerned, our canteens actually, in our system we have a type of meal for each day. So this is the way how we can implement that. I mean, if we make a separate timetable for each day, for Monday we will issue the timetable, rather food menu, that on Monday we will provide such type of food and then on Tuesday we will provide such type too. Okay. So these are the ways by which we can incorporate the habit of healthy food eating. Okay. One thing. Second, as the guidelines have been issued to regulate it, we have to monitor it. And in our system, in our school, particularly in my school, we have set up a committee which look after all these things, and we have ensured that within 50 or rather 100 meters, we are not allowing anybody to sell all these things.
Okay, but how big is the problem with respect to the junk food specifically being available to the schools, to the children within the school premises, be it in the canteen or just outside the school?
Problem is big because children prefer junk food. Parents also, because in government sector we have parents of all categories. So means the parents, few are not well educated, few are not aware, but there are few parents who know the problems. So we can, with the collaboration of parents, actually we can deal with it. But children like it, so we have to chart out a plan for that. Some awareness things are to be organized in the Vidyalaya, so that naturally they should avoid it.
Okay. Neeti? From the parents' perspective, and as Mr. Saxena is also pointing out, it's not that the junk food is only available in schools. But it's available in the households as well.
Yes.
And what about the tiffins which the children carry? If they carry the junk food in their tiffins, then how do we deal with that?
See, as Mr. Saxena rightly said, it has to be collaborative initiative along with the teachers and the parents, of course, because see. Banning advertising area just beyond, say for 50 meters around the school will not solve the problem.
It's a digital age.
It's a digital age, and everybody is equipped with Apple iPad, which we and you may not be using. They have the access to. And since this is the time, the era where both the parents are working to meet up with their expenses and everything, so they are not around. So there are certain things which we can do, make the children available to read the if and buts and advantages and disadvantages of junk food. I think this generation which is coming up is more logical. If you explain them with the logics, I'm sure they will understand the reason why they are being softly being pushed towards the homemade recipes and all instead of and in fact I would also submit one point here. We had a different when we used to be child, we used to do horticulture our own self. So we used to grow lady fingers at home, tomatoes and everything at home. So we had that urge of having them. This era where they are only taught about vegetables on the smartphones,
the smart boards.
The smart boards and all. So I mean they are not connected. So where we are lacking is the connection between the nature and the children. So we need to first get that connected and then start implementing. We can't just force and do something. You have to make them aware that what harm it is going to do with you. Of course, putting certain limits, if it is free access to children in the school canteens and all, of course it is going to, because we as parents are not there to guide them. But of course, it has to be a continuous and a consistent process to achieve what we want to achieve.
Okay, Aditi, looking at the guidelines and what the guidelines say and what Mr. Saxena and Neeti is also pointing out, it looks like we will have to work around on both sides, the school as well as home, if we want to go ahead and tackle this issue.
I agree with you. The debate is not new. We have been arguing about junk foods and their availability for several years now. But what is new is the concept of high sugar, high salt and high fat foods.
Okay.
This is considered to be a dangerous category, especially for children who are in a growing up age. These guidelines have come not just out of the blue or out of a vacuum. There have been attempts, as all the panelists have pointed out. FSSAI has been working on it for some time now. But this time what they are trying to do is they are trying to get stakeholder comments on this whole draft notification, and they propose to make rules out of this. So the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India rules have the force of the law. Why are they doing it? Because a very important government survey has been unveiled just about a month ago. It was conducted in conjunction with the UNICEF, and strange and dangerous things were found out about the health of India's children. Okay. It was found out that about 10% of all school kids, and it was a huge sample survey, about 10% of those school kids were found to be pre-diabetic, which means that as they grow up, they are already predisposed to a very dangerous disease of diabetes. And all risk factors for NCDs were found in these children. They had high triglycerides, they had high predisposition to hypertension. They had all the risk factors for chronic kidney disease. So when you actually have a body of objective findings to back up a policy, then the policy acquires a different kind of a weight. Let's also not forget that this particular government is stressing eat right movement a lot. We've heard the Prime Minister speak about it. Health Minister Harshvardhan, himself a medical professional, talks about eat right at every possible forum. The idea is to now convert all school campuses of India into eat right campuses.
Okay.
These guidelines have to be seen in context of the holistic picture, where you actually now have empirical evidence to suggest that unless you move against these category of high salt, high fat foods now, your children are simply going to be exposed to all kinds of dangers of health.
Okay.
I don't buy the argument that if you cannot prevent the sale of junk foods in homes, you don't try and prevent it in some other space. After all, children are spending a good 8-9 hours in schools, and they do tend to, when you sit with peers, you tend to eat a lot, you tend to, eating is part of the culture, school culture. Eating is part of the thing that peers do. So if you have safe food at school campuses, and these particular guidelines are saying 3 very important things, not just the availability of junk food, they are also saying for the first time that all food canteen contractors have to be licensed. So these contractors have to now acquire the license which is required by food business operators.
Okay.
So just like you and I, when we go to a restaurant, we are assured of the quality, we are assured of the safety of the food that's being given to us. That was no longer the case in schools right now. But this particular guideline requires that also.
Okay.
Besides, there is a very important diet plan which the National Institute of Nutrition, Hyderabad, has prepared. This document is telling every school in the country, every school management to acquire that diet plan.
And to go by that.
And to go by that, and it's not a difficult thing to do.
Okay.
I think it's a very encouraging step forward towards a healthy India, because children are, after all, the citizens of tomorrow.
And the future of the country as well. Unless they're healthy, it wouldn't be possible for them to go ahead and contribute positively there as well. I'll come to Mr. Saxena and Neeti on those 2 points. But before that, let me go back to Ms. Sharma from FSSAI. Ms. Sharma, you pointed out initially, and the guidelines also clearly seems to be focused on, and Aditi also has made it very amply clear, on the foods which are high in fat, salt and sugar. But why only focus on school canteens, school premises, all those, these being sold within the 50-meter radius of the school? Why not expand the ambit?
See, what we are trying to emphasize is that while the child or the student is in the school, like it was pointed out, the good 7-8 hours that they are there, we are trying to inculcate through our education process, through the curriculum, through the extracurricular activities which are happening in the school, of how to eat a healthy diet. You are being taught in your science or your EVS what is a balanced diet, what is a food pyramid, what is a food plate. But when it actually comes to adopting it, implementing it, it is not happening. What is happening is that the child is bombarded with all kind of food which is high in salt, fat, sugar, which is available with them. And then they are expected not to be tempted, not to enter into peer pressure, not to buy any of those things, even if they're getting pocket money from home. Within the 50 meters radius, again, the same logic applies, that while the child is, say, waiting for their parent or the school bus to come pick them up, they are not tempted by this kind of food. Once they've reached home, they are under the guidance of their parents, they are at their homes, it is again optional for them what they do. But within the school, where the entire focus is on having a balanced, nutritious diet, I believe the regulation, that is why, caters for that.
Okay. And is this, as Aditi is pointing out, one more step towards the Eat Right movement?
Now, the very idea of an Eat Right school is not very complicated. It is very, very simple. All it expects is that people, that the students, while they are in the school, are not only taught from the textbook, but also given practical experience through extracurricular or curricular activities. Simple ways in which they realize what is a balanced food, what is nutritious, what is local, seasonal, why not to waste food, how to maintain personal hygiene, how to ensure that the premises of the school are clean, how to ensure that the vendors or the people who are preparing the food in the mess or the canteen are also maintaining personal hygiene as well as hygiene of their surroundings, so that the child is getting food as good as they're getting food at home.
Okay.
So the very idea of Eat Right School is very, very simple. It is something that we want our students to have just the way we would want our children to have at home.
Okay. So those seems to be, the reasons behind the guidelines which have come in. But 2 important points which Ms. Sharma also pointed out, and Aditi as well. Let me bring in Mr. Saxena and Ms. Neeti here on this. Implementing the guidelines, obviously the guidelines being put in place, once they become law, they'll have to be implemented. But the very fact that, there is National Institute of Nutrition guidelines, which Aditi mentioned. Now, those to be followed. So Mr. Saxena, how do you think that this can be done in a manner in which it is easy to implement, make children, the students specifically, understand that it is for their own good and the parents as well?
Yeah, in school it is possible only in this way only. Because when we organize some, some competitions, some practices where we can tell children what is good for them to eat. For example, we can organize some salad competitions, someday some breakfast, breakfast competitions. I should not give the name competition, rather a type of community, community breakfast, one day community lunch, where children should be asked to bring only fruits or the sprouts or all these things. Even children, even the teachers, even myself, principal should also be with them. And then we eat them with them. In this way, the children will learn. Naturally, it is the matter of cultivation of habits rather. If they are trying to do that in the schools, it means they are trying to develop the habit of eating good food. And that is, so the guideline in that way can be implemented in the school. Rather than teaching them, rather than telling them what not to do, we should tell them what to do.
What to do.
So that is possible only when we practice all those things. Now it is very easy, especially in primary section, if we start these things. This is very easy because children in primary, they always follow their teachers and the school. What the school says, this is the hallmark for them. And then they follow it. So what
and then it becomes a habit.
It becomes a habit. So if you say, each day you say junk food is bad, the child automatically will say the junk food is bad. So it has to be repeated again and again. And at the same time, the teachers themselves have to practice with them. So in this way we can implement them. And one day, a workshop for mothers can also be organized in the school, because in government sector, all mothers, as I've already mentioned, that they are all not well educated, rather educated but not aware. So if we call them and if we tell them the benefits, rather than making it a rule, we should try to make it a practice in a school. A culture is to be developed.
Okay.
So
one interesting aspect, Neeti, here is that these draft guidelines are for the food which is made available inside the school premises, the canteens, the kitchen, or the mess, or within the 50-meter radius. Now, although as Ms. Sharma also pointed out that within the confines of the house, it is optional for them. But all of us know that parents are equally responsible for the health of their children. So how difficult it might be to implement the same guidelines at home, because it has to be a very coordinated effort, as Mr. Saxena is also pointing out. The children will bring tiffins from their homes.
See, as I mentioned before, creating awareness is one big thing that you can guide your children to move towards that. And talking with them, giving some time with them, I would like to draw attention towards the the sale of cold drinks in the market before. And initially the sales were very high. Now why it has gone dip? Because children are aware now. You ask them, they will refuse. They would rather go towards juice, and they will rather take charge or something else which is healthy, because now they are aware. So there are reasons, there are ways that which will help us to inculcate these habits inside the children. More or less, I think as Mr. Saxena said, we all are agreeing to same point that of course school access should be limited for them to buy junk foods. And we can also implement certain guidelines like printing the side effects of junk food on the packaging of the junk food that they are buying, which is of course outside the schools and everywhere, wherever in the market, because there are multiple outlets in the market available and within the societies where the children are living. So we need to actually create awareness. It should be not somebody's responsibility. If FSSAI has given a guideline, of course it is in our benefit. So schools, parents, the society, everybody should join hands and do as much activity with the children, because they will understand how to take it further. And as rightly Mr. Saxena again mentioned, that primary children, that's the age when something is inculcated very strongly inside them, they will take it further.
The early years of the school.
Absolutely, absolutely. They should be more connected with the nature. I don't see it happening. I have been pointing it before that horticulture should be made the child's activity, not somebody, some professional company who is sending people for whom it is a work. For them, it should be enjoyment. For them, it should be something, connecting to the nature.
Okay.
So that's how things should be inculcated. That's
Okay,
what I think.
learning with fun and also implementing that in the life and the entire process as well. Aditi, your views on ensuring that all stakeholders will have to make that coordinated effort and approach this particular issue with a coordinated teamwork sort of.
I agree. The biggest challenge for this very important guideline, which was actually required for a long time, will be implementation. We also know, if we don't go back too much in time, in 2003, India enacted a very important law against tobacco. That also was the same reasoning, if you remember, that tobacco companies are targeting children. So because these are habit forming things, anything that has all kinds of flavors, like junk food is full of flavors. You remember the Nestle controversy around Maggi, and Maggi had to be taken off the shelves. That was a rare case of very strict implementation of the law, and Nestle, a big MNC, had to actually buckle down under government pressure. So our governments have shown in the past that if they use the force of the law, they can bring these global multinational giants down to their knees. The fact of the matter is that packaging of junk food needs to actually record every ingredient. Just like you remember the tobacco debate, how much time it took for the scientists to prove that tobacco has carcinogens. And major lobbies of tobacco actually went after these scientists, and how these people were hounded out of their jobs. But ultimately, all the evidence came in and anti-tobacco laws were framed. There will come a time in our own lifetime, I'm sure, that there'll be laws actually to prohibit the sale of junk foods, because they are full of unhealthy stuff. And I'm sure a lot of this stuff is directly linked to very, very debilitating effects on health. And why children? Because children are the most vulnerable physically. We keep talking about, you need to feed your children well. The moment a child is born, the child has to be breastfed for 6 months exclusively, because that's the period his brain is developing. So if your children are growing up on junk food, they're not going to be cognitively developed. You will not have intelligent, well-rounded personalities, which you need for a country like India. We are banking on our demographic dividend, and we have to save it. So,
Okay.
the FSSAI has to actually ensure that the structure of the law has to be such that nobody gets any escape routes.
Okay,
So you plug all the escape routes.
Okay, so these are the main issues. Thank you so much, Aditi, Neeti, and Mr. Saxena, as well as Mr. Inoshi Sharma from FSSAI, of the issue related to junk food. These were the details of the draft guidelines which have been put in public domain by the Food and Safety Standards of India, Authority of India, and clearly, the focus out here is to ensure a healthy future for our children. Their health seems to be of primary concern to everyone, and as our panelists have pointed out, all the stakeholders, not only the school, but also the parents, will have to make that concerted and a coordinated effort to ensure that these guidelines are followed. We'll come back again tomorrow with a different topic and different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha.